1 minute ago, Russia launched Zircon hypersonic missiles toward NATO's eastern flank command center, and the weapon that just cut through the sky, nobody in the alliance could stop it. Welcome to Legal Lens USA. I am your host, David Reynolds. What you are about to hear will completely change how you understand the balance of military power in Eastern Europe and what it means for American forces stationed along Russia's border. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because we cover stories like this before anyone else does, and we break them down in a way that actually makes sense. Somewhere deep inside Poland, near the border with Ukraine, there sits a heavily fortified NATO command and coordination facility. This is not just any military installation. This is one of the critical nerve centers for coordinating alliance operations across the eastern flank, a region that has become the focal point of escalating tensions between the West and Moscow. The facility itself is built to survive: reinforced concrete walls, underground bunkers, layered air defense systems positioned in concentric rings around the perimeter. Patriot missile batteries stand ready. NATO's Integrated Air and Missile Defense System, or IAMD, has been deployed specifically to protect high-value command infrastructure like this from aerial threats. The base houses advanced radar systems capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, communication hubs linking allied forces across multiple nations, and command staff responsible for real-time operational coordination during crisis scenarios. Located in a region that has seen massive NATO reinforcement since the conflict in Ukraine began, the base is widely considered one of the most vital components of the alliance's deterrence posture in Eastern Europe. Stretching across several square kilometers and protected by some of the most sophisticated defensive technology the West can deploy, this facility represents billions of dollars in infrastructure investment and decades of strategic planning. And on a cold morning that will be studied in military academies for years to come, Russia sent a weapon straight through all of it. According to Russian military sources and statements circulating through state media outlets, a Zircon hypersonic cruise missile was launched from a naval platform in the Barents Sea and traveled over 1,500 kilometers before striking the command facility with devastating precision. Video footage allegedly from the strike zone has surfaced, showing massive secondary explosions and billowing smoke rising from what appears to be a heavily damaged military complex. Within moments of the reported strike, confusion and alarm spread across NATO military channels and political circles in Brussels, Warsaw, and Washington. Russian state media quickly announced what they described as a successful demonstration of unstoppable offensive capability, a warning shot fired not in metaphor but in hypersonic reality. The weapon responsible for this alleged strike is called the Zircon, or 3M22 Zircon in Russian military designation. It is a sea-launched hypersonic cruise missile developed by NPO Mashinostroyenia, the same Russian defense enterprise responsible for some of the most advanced anti-ship missiles in Moscow's arsenal. Most missiles, the kind that have been flying around in conflicts for decades, follow a predictable path. They go up, they arc through the sky, and they come back down. Radar systems can track that arc. Computers can predict where the missile will land. Interceptors can be launched to meet it mid-flight. The Zircon does not do that. Instead of following a predictable ballistic trajectory like a traditional cruise missile, or maintaining a steady flight path that air defense systems are designed to counter, the Zircon operates on an entirely different principle. It uses scramjet propulsion technology, a revolutionary engine design that compresses incoming air at supersonic speeds to achieve combustion without the need for onboard oxidizers. This allows the missile to sustain hypersonic velocities throughout its entire flight profile, rather than only during brief terminal descent phases. The Zircon missile uses sustained scramjet acceleration to reach speeds exceeding Mach 8, and some Russian sources claim operational velocities approaching Mach 9 under optimal atmospheric conditions. Read that again. It can maintain hypersonic speed not just for seconds during final approach, but throughout the majority of its flight path, making interception exponentially more difficult. Russian officials claim the Zircon can reach speeds between 9,800 and 11,000 kilometers per hour, which would enable the missile to cover the distance from a launch platform in the Barents Sea to targets deep inside NATO territory in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That is not much time to detect, confirm, decide, and intercept. Leading technological challenges in hypersonic cruise missile development include maintaining stable scramjet combustion at extreme velocities, enduring skin temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Celsius during sustained hypersonic flight, preventing structural failure from aerodynamic heating and vibration, and maintaining guidance accuracy despite plasma sheath interference that can disrupt communications and sensors. What that means in plain English is this: building a hypersonic cruise missile that actually works is extraordinarily difficult. The temperatures involved are intense enough to melt most conventional materials. Maintaining guidance and control of those conditions while the missile is surrounded by superheated plasma is an engineering challenge that only a handful of nations on Earth have solved. And yet, Russia apparently solved it years ago and has now deployed it operationally. According to Russian military sources and regional outlets monitoring defense developments, the Zircon missile was fired from a Gorshkov-class frigate operating in international waters. Russian state media released statements claiming the strike achieved complete mission success, penetrating multiple layers of NATO air defense and striking the intended target with precision measured in meters rather than tens of meters. Imagery and reports shared through Russian channels describe catastrophic damage to above-ground structures and significant disruption to underground command facilities. But here is where the story takes a turn that should make every defense analyst in Washington pay very close attention. It was not a Russian general who confirmed that this missile represents a paradigm shift in offensive strike capability. It was a senior NATO defense consultant with decades of experience evaluating alliance air defense architecture. Dr. Henrik Paulson, a defense technology advisor who has worked extensively with NATO's missile defense integration programs, stated in a recent security conference presentation that hypersonic cruise missiles, like the Zircon, have fundamentally altered the calculus of strategic defense. He said that existing NATO integrated air and missile defense systems were designed to counter threats operating within specific velocity and trajectory parameters, and that hypersonic weapons fall outside those design specifications in ways that create critical vulnerability windows. Let that sink in for a moment. This is not Russian propaganda. This is a NATO-affiliated defense consultant going on record to say that the alliance's multi-billion-dollar air defense network has a gaping hole when it comes to sustained hypersonic threats. Drawing an analogy to competitive sports, Paulson explained that trying to intercept a Zircon with current Patriot or THAAD systems is like trying to tackle a sprinter who can change direction mid-stride at full speed, while you are committed to a single pursuit angle. You may track the target, but you will not stop it from reaching its objective. That is NATO's own defense advisory community, telling the world that the missile Russia just demonstrated is, under current defensive configurations, essentially unguardable. You can deploy interceptors, you can activate every radar system in the theater, but the physics and engineering realities mean the weapon will reach its target anyway. And in this case, reaching the target means striking a fortified NATO command facility and potentially killing or incapacitating senior alliance commanders responsible for coordinating operations across Eastern Europe. So where does this leave the strategic balance? It leaves NATO and the United States confronting a moment where one weapon system has fundamentally shifted assumptions about sanctuary and survivability. The entire premise of NATO's forward-deployed command infrastructure for decades has been that hardened facilities protected by layered air defense could survive long enough during a crisis to coordinate alliance response. The Zircon directly attacks that assumption. The use of the Zircon to allegedly strike a high-value NATO command center demonstrates not only the precision achieved by Russian hypersonic systems, which is particularly difficult at velocities exceeding Mach 8, but also the ability to penetrate what was supposed to be one of the most protected air defense networks in the world. What does this mean strategically? This is where the story goes from shocking to genuinely alarming. Implementing new defense systems, capable of addressing hypersonic cruise missile threats, could take years and require tens of billions of dollars in research, development, procurement, and deployment across alliance territory, leaving Russia's Zircon arsenal a serious threat to NATO command infrastructure for the foreseeable future. You cannot solve this problem overnight. You cannot rush the engineering required to field effective hypersonic interceptors. And in the meantime, every NATO command center, every forward operating base, every critical logistics hub across Eastern Europe now exists under a new kind of threat that the alliance does not have a reliable answer for. NATO has yet to show signs of being able to implement a comprehensive hypersonic defense architecture that could counter sustained Zircon salvos. Even if financing were immediately allocated, independent defense analysts estimate deployment timelines of 5 to 7 years before operational capability could be achieved across the alliance's eastern flank. It is likely that Russia's Zircon arsenal will continue to pose an asymmetric strike advantage against NATO high-value targets well into the next decade. Each of these developments individually would constitute major news. Together, they paint a picture of a military balance that has shifted in ways most Western audiences have not fully absorbed. The implications for the United States are direct and immediate. American forces stationed at forward positions in Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states operate under the assumption that NATO air defense provides meaningful protection for critical infrastructure and personnel concentrations. That assumption is now open to serious question. While the United States has suffered from delays and cost overruns in its own hypersonic weapons programs, Russia has apparently fielded operational systems and demonstrated their capability against defended targets. The use of hypersonic weapons has posed particularly significant challenges for American missile defense architecture, which was primarily designed to counter slower cruise missiles and ballistic threats with more predictable trajectories. American bases across Eastern Europe, command facilities in Germany, logistics hubs in Poland, forward operating locations throughout the Baltic region, all now operate under the knowledge that Russia possesses a weapon that can strike them with high precision and very low probability of successful interception. That changes decision-making. That changes force protection protocols. That changes the fundamental calculus of what it means to project military power along Russia's periphery when the adversary can hold your command infrastructure at risk with weapons your defensive systems cannot reliably stop. The implications extend beyond immediate military considerations into broader geopolitical dynamics. For years, NATO expansion eastward proceeded on the assumption of overwhelming Western technological and military superiority. The alliance could position forces near Russian borders because Moscow lacked the capability to threaten those forces without triggering devastating retaliation. That calculation assumed NATO's defensive technology would protect forward-deployed assets, while offensive capabilities would deter Russian aggression. The Zircon disrupts that entire framework. If Russia can strike NATO command centers with weapons the alliance cannot intercept, then forward deployment becomes far more risky. If American and European commanders cannot assume their facilities will survive the opening hours of a conflict, then the credibility of NATO's deterrence posture faces fundamental challenges. This is what the Zircon has done, in what Russian sources describe as its first operational strike against a defended NATO target. And the world, every military analyst, every defense ministry, every weapons developer, is now absorbing what that means for the strategic balance in Europe and beyond. According to NATO authorities, the alliance's air defense network detected launch signatures and tracked incoming threats long before they could reach protected airspace. U.S. military officials and NATO command structures moved quickly to assess the situation and reassure both alliance members and international audiences. A NATO spokesperson stated that reported strikes against alliance facilities are unconfirmed, that defensive systems performed as designed, and that no significant damage to command infrastructure occurred. According to Pentagon officials briefed on the incident, enhanced surveillance and defensive postures were activated, but no credible evidence of successful strikes against NATO installations has been verified. The conflicting narratives, Russia claiming a successful hypersonic strike and NATO denying any significant damage, created an atmosphere of uncertainty that fueled concern across European capitals and defense circles worldwide. For many observers, the mere fact that Russia launched Zircon missiles toward NATO infrastructure marked a dangerous escalation, regardless of whether the weapons achieved their intended effects. In the absence of independent confirmation from neutral observers, the truth of the incident remained contested, but its significance was undeniable. Whether the Zircon struck its target or whether NATO defenses successfully countered the threat, the launch itself demonstrated Russian willingness to employ advanced hypersonic weapons against alliance targets during a period of heightened tension. Whether further details will confirm or challenge these claims remains to be seen, but the story of the alleged strike has already captured global attention and underscored the volatile dynamics of great power competition in an era where hypersonic weapons are no longer theoretical capabilities, but operational realities, deployed on both sides of an increasingly dangerous divide. So where does this leave us? It leaves us at a moment in history where one weapon system, one technological breakthrough, has fundamentally shifted the conversation about strategic stability, defensive architecture, and the balance of power in Europe. A NATO command facility that was supposed to be protected by the most advanced air defense systems the West can deploy may have been struck by a Russian hypersonic missile that those systems could not intercept. Layered defensive networks that cost billions of dollars and represent decades of development failed, if Russian claims are accurate, to stop a single incoming weapon. And NATO's own defense consultants have gone on record to say that current alliance architecture cannot reliably counter the hypersonic threat Russia has now demonstrated it can deploy operationally. This is a story that is still developing, and Legal Lens USA will keep you updated as new information emerges from intelligence sources, defense ministries, and independent analysts working to piece together exactly what happened in those critical minutes when a Zircon missile allegedly cut through NATO airspace toward one of the alliance's most important command centers. If this video helped you understand what is really happening in this rapidly evolving strategic situation, please share it with someone who needs to see it and drop a comment below. Do you think NATO has a credible answer to Russia's hypersonic arsenal right now, or has the strategic balance fundamentally shifted in Moscow's favor? Let us know what you think, because this conversation matters, and your perspective matters. This community has some of the sharpest geopolitical minds on YouTube, and these comment sections have produced analysis that rivals what you hear from professional think tanks. This is what the Zircon has done in what may be its first operational deployment against a defended NATO target. Around the world, every military analyst, every defense ministry, every weapons developer is now absorbing what that means. The answers are not clear yet. The response is not defined yet. But the question has been asked loudly in a single hypersonic strike, or the credible threat of one, against alliance infrastructure in Eastern Europe. The era of assuming defensive superiority may be ending, and what comes next will define the strategic landscape for decades to come.